Because either way, if you have enough will, it's going to get done the way that I want it to get done regardless. And it'll be less painful if we just do it right the first time, because we will still have to do it. And you may have to do it 3 or 4 more times, but eventually you will just succumb to the fact that we're going to do it this way. And I think all of the great things that have happened for humanity have been from one man or woman who had an idea and just wouldn't let people shake it from them. Who claim to be perfectionists are not perfectionists. They're actually procrastinating because they're not doing anything. Correct. And so it just is a socially acceptable label, because the real perfectionists feel this sickness where they like want to itch their skin off until the thing's done, but they are trying to get it done. Whereas the perfectionist or the procrastinator uses that to say, like, I'm not sure, I'm just getting it right. But like the person who's an actual perfectionist, one, wants to finish and is working every hour of every day on the thing and seeing progress towards it. Because if you don't know how your thing is getting better, you're not a perfectionist, you're just ignorant. If you are trying to battle the same boss over and over again, and you don't change what you're doing, and the boss keeps beating you, then it's not the game's problem, it's your problem. You are the problem. And I think that's like if you continue, I talked about, obviously I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, but I usually do this when I have a crowd. I just say, like, hey, raise your hand if you work all the hours of the day. And a lot, most of the crowd raises their hand. I say, okay, who here has been stuck at the same revenue level for 6 months or more? And then I say, keep the hands up. And like, honestly, most of the time the same hands are raised. I say, you're doing the wrong shit. Like, if you put all your inputs and the outputs haven't changed, then you have the same condition and the same behavior, and so you have learned nothing. And I remember reading, like, it was probably like my 10th book in a row, and I realized that the words in that book contradicted like the second self-help book that one was like, it's all about goals, the other one's like, it's all about taking steps or whatever it was, right? And I all of a sudden I was like, my life is the same. I've read all these books, but I still literally live in the exact same condo in Baltimore doing the same job. Like, nothing has changed. And so I just made the commitment that whatever the next book that I was going to read, I would just not read another book until I'd done everything in that book. And that's when I quit my job and I did a whole bunch of other things. And I've actually more or less stuck with that in terms of, like, when I read books or even listen to podcasts, I usually do it with an intention to get something out of it. If life is a long journey of self-acceptance, I think the earlier you can accept your own peculiarities as just part of you, rather than trying to justify them or mold to the archetype that you think is acceptable within your social circle. At least for me, like, there's this period of discomfort when you change anything because everyone around you wants you to fit within the label that they are comfortable with. Like, by the time you have all the information to make a perfect decision, it's too late. And by the time you have consensus where everyone's like, that's a good investment, it probably isn't, because it's already been mispriced, because it's already inflated and it's above what its intrinsic value is. And so, like, good investors fundamentally can think for themselves. And it's such an easy thing to say and such a hard thing to do. And so it's being able to say, if I shut myself in a room and I had to come up with a value for something and just use my own mind to come up with what I think this is worth, it's that answer that you get in a room, in isolation, with no internet connection, that you believe in that number more than every single other person's. And most people can't do that. For me, it comes down to truly valuing your opinion of yourself more than other people's opinion of you. And it's an easy thing to say, and it's incredibly hard to do, because that means that if you disagree with everyone else in the room, there's this meme that I love. I don't know if you've seen it. There's this little cartoon of this one little guy, and then there's like an ocean of people that way, and it just says, yes, you're all wrong. And I feel like that meme, Joe Rakashi, my brother and editor in the books in the battle against nihilism and towards truth, we send that meme back and forth to one another when we're like, yes, everyone is wrong about this word, like, we are right. And I think it's just being willing to, like, but the only way you can believe in a thing or an idea or even yourself is because you have the evidence behind you that supports that your belief isn't full of shit. So that when you're in that room and you come up with that one number and you say, I think everyone's wrong, I think this is actually what it's worth, you're not just making it up to say you believe something different. And I love thinking about that when I'm thinking about big life decisions. Like, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And it's usually like the big one, the bigger thing that I really want to do, but I'm afraid to do it. It's like, that's what I should do. And to your point about, you had the 5 things that you told your team. The one that we have is, originally it was something that we called 1 of 1, which is make only things that we can make. Like, you'll never see a Coca-Cola business breakdown from Alex Hormozi because anyone can do a Coca-Cola business breakdown. That's not 1 of 1 content. But if I say, I doubled the sales of this company by implementing these 4 things, no one else can say that because no one else did it, right? And so it's 1 of 1. Normalizing consequences of failure as we said earlier, win or learn. And I think that little frame, believe it or not, for anyone who's like on the teetering edge of like, what should I do that thing? When I was debating quitting my job, which is still the hardest decision I've made to this day, still of the many that I've made, was I figured that if I didn't make the entrepreneurship thing work, I would have a hell of a story for business school. And that was actually like the reasoned argument that I gave myself for being willing to quit, was that I think that with my experience, I'll still be able to get a job. Like, I love competitors who like optimizing because I always see it as a weakness because it's so easy to exploit. It's like, oh, you need your 8 hours of sleep, or you need your morning routine, or if you don't have your supplements, you're just totally fucked. Or like, I didn't have my coffee this morning, so I can't function. Like, I love to compete against people like that because they're so easy to break.
It's fragile.
Yeah. And so what happens is the optimizations become superstition.
Correct.
And so my fear around, and maybe I take a more extreme stance on this, but like, I've always wanted to be able to, with an internet connection and a laptop and a fold-out chair, go make money. You can only be canceled in 2 ways. You can be canceled if you choose to stop making content, stop being public, or all means and methods and channels of communication that you do not control remove you from it. So like, for example, there's Tate, right? And he had his, like, he's not allowed to be on the platforms, but they allow his content to be on the platform. So has he been canceled? No, I would argue no.
And there's still other platforms.
And he continues to make content. That's what your day needs to look like in order to get into the top floor with the view that looks over these things. And so that you can not make money for 2 years while you write a book that eventually makes money or whatever is not true. And so it's the difference between like, oh, I should fly private because that's what rich people do. I should play basketball because I want to be tall, and modeling the behavior at the top of the mountain rather than the climb. And so they're completely different. And so this whole idea, unfortunately, and I don't blame the people who do this, is they see their current life, like I would see mine, and say, well, what do I do now? I do everything that I love. Okay. But I didn't get here doing everything that I love. I did a fuckload of shit I hate, and I did it for a very long period of time. And I did not have anyone to root me on. And in fact, I had many people who were actively trying to destroy my path and tell me why it was a terrible idea.